Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Senna, for leading us into worship with these songs and in worship. I also just realized how much taller Sushan is than I am because I said this in the height for me fitting, and Sushan was like looking over it. And so just the difference. It's interesting. The setup always has to fit very personally. Um, Figuring out who we are, who somebody else is, how tall, how interactive. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being here in person, for being online, and for like worshiping together. It means a lot to me, honestly, like seeing your faces here, knowing that someone else is watching online. Because to be honest, I'm a person, I think a lot about what other people think. I realized it, especially last week when Jörg was asking in our first part of Church Without Walls, he was asking, what is holding you back to be out there as a priest, to like really be the church no matter where? And I realized what's holding me back is quite often what might people say. And then our small group on Zoom last week, we talked about that quite a bit, like that, like the reaction from people is often holding us back to just stand up and say what we think, or to just do what we think a priest or a the church is supposed to do. And I also talked to Jörg this week, and like he said that in his small group, when it was about the raisin cakes in Hosea 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, um, it was the same topic. Like those raisin cakes, what is distracting us from God is for many people the thought, what do other people think? And again, I remember bringing that up in my small group as well, in my discussion group, when we had this question. Somehow, to be honest, this what do other people think? How do people react? How do people um like act toward me? Like, what do I do to them? How do they accept me, like me? What significance do I have to them? Is a question I'm asking myself very often. And now, as I was preparing the sermon for today about like Church Without Walls, part 2, I realized something. I realized that if so many people in already our church are concerned about what other people think, they are all also concerned about what I think. I'm concerned about what you think. That matters to me. It changes how I feel today. It changes how I think about stuff. How often does Julia come up to me over the day and tell me what she thinks about something? And it totally changes my thinking, my attitude, my feelings. But if like what I say, what I do, how I react matters to you guys, I have quite a bit of influence. I have quite a bit of influence. Like what I say matters to you, I have quite a bit of influence. And if it doesn't matter to you personally, there's still another, I don't know how many people that do care. I even care about like walking on the sidewalk and there's a person walking by. I look at that person, the person doesn't look at me, and I have my thoughts about that person. Like, oh, does the person have a bad day? Or, oh, I feel hurt in my feelings because the person didn't pay me attention. Even a person I don't even know. And let's just think, if even like 50% of the people you meet every day cares about what you think, you have quite a lot of influence. And my theory today is actually that we have more influence on others than we actually think. What you do matters. What you say matters to other people. It influences other people's lives. In a 360-degree dimension. If you're leading someone or if you're a teacher, of course, what you says matters. You shape kids' lives. It matters a lot if you accept them in love or if you just try to dictate your classroom. It matters a lot. And I think everyone understands, like if a boss says something, like that person has influence on the people he's leading. But what about people on eye level? Family, friends. I think at least the same. It might not be the very direct, like I say that you have to do it, or if I live that, people will automatically copy it, but they will at some point. We have a big influence on our environment and how we act, how we react, what we tell people. Do we encourage people? Do we not? You have a lot of influence. And I actually think even like upwards, vertically higher, how do we react toward our bosses, toward the people leading us, influences their day? How your kids in the classroom, again, to the teachers, react toward you matters to you. It might even hurt your feelings. It might bring you to more questions of like, how do I handle this situation if that kid reacts like that? And that's just one of many situations. Even like from like in the upwards perspective, we have a lot of influence. If we have a boss, the way we react, we have a lot of influence. And now Jörg said last week that we are the church. We are priests and priestesses. We are the ones not just gathering here, but being out there in the world as the church. How does that come together? And I want to look with you at that by, again, looking at this picture of the priests in the Old Testament and asking, okay, what influence did they have? How did they use their influence they had on the people around them? And for me, the first picture that came up is the picture of the tabernacle. When the Israelites were like getting out of Egypt, out of slavery in Egypt, they were kind of stuck in the desert, and God told them to build like a tent, and then there's fences around it, there's altars, there's a lot of stuff. The tabernacle is kind of like the prototype of the temple, just as a tent and not a solid building. The first priests in the Old Testament were told to take this tabernacle and carry it from one place to the other. This didn't only last for 40 years in the desert. It lasted for 440 years till the first temple was built. 440 years long, priests didn't just have like the task to be there for sacrifices, and I don't know what's your first picture that comes up, but one of the main duties a priest had is to, whenever God said, okay, let's do another tour, let's get from point A to point B, they had to pack everything up, gather the whole stuff, and carry a tent through the desert. That was their job. I think it wasn't just a tent. The tabernacle was the place where God was actively present. The place where the people of Israel saw like this fire cloud in their midst, and they knew that God is here. So what the priests did by carrying around this tent was they actually brought the presence of God to the people. Not that it wasn't there, but they raised the awareness of the people of Israel that God is in their midst. They carried God through the desert to remind the people, it's God, He's here, He's active, He is with you. They were raising the awareness of God's active presence. How do you do that in your everyday life? In my family, I think most of my immediate family members kind of like gave up to always bring up the topic of like God, the church, because my like extended family kind of like got sick of it for some time. There were some fights, there were some debates, there was like that feeling that keeps you from like bringing it up again, because what do people say? Does it just start another fight? And so like for a long time, it was just never a topic that we brought up because we didn't want to like stir up something. Over the last weeks, especially since like Julia and I are here in Canada, I realized that one of my sisters, I think she does it actively. She started bringing up God much more when we're together with our extended family. So, for example, on our New Year's like meeting, all the extended family was together. Everyone shared something, a nice like poem or something that they thought is like something nice for the new year. And this one sister, she chose a very uh, like just a very nice kids song, but a Christian song where it's simply about I want to trust God in whatever happens this year. And she did it like even with some words afterwards, being like, and I really hope that God carries you through this year. Saying it to my extended family, where like I was, it was hard for me as like being the pastor. I kind of had to pray in the end because my family is always asking me to be nice, but I don't feel like I really want to do it because it brings up something weird. Something like, what do people think? Is it just like, so it's done? Do they actually believe it? Where are they at? But it's fascinating that my sister just started to drop that, to say, I want to bring God in there. I want to raise awareness of God's active presence. And she even topped it last week when my cousin got twins. And in our family group chat, my cousin said like, or actually his wife said, uh, here are our two miracles, is what she texted. And like being happy about those miracles. And everyone, and myself as well, like I just said like, congrats, awesome, great. And this one sister said, wow, God is really good. She didn't just say congrats to your achievement. She said, God is really good. And then she went out and bought this baby clothes where it says, sometimes when you pray for a miracle, God gives you two. And like instead of saying, it's a miracle, but you did something great, like you were awesome in like somehow achieving this set of twins. She said, wow, this miracle is not just a miracle happening from somewhere, it is God who did it. And she's putting everything on raising awareness for God's gracious and wonderful active presence. Being a priest out there in the world means to have influence, and to have influence to raise awareness of God being there as well. A second duty of the priest, and I think Jörg also picked it up last week, and I just want to go into it again because it kind of bothered me a little bit. The second thing priests were called to do, besides like carrying around the tent, was of course sacrifices. And it's so hard to understand, okay, if we are priests, what does it mean to be like to bring sacrifices? And in the picture I chose, you can kind of see that it's sacrifices is not just we're killing an animal here. There's even sacrifices where it's actually just about burning something that was not alive, like some just getting some smoke out of there. It's basically about worshiping. And Paul brings that together in Romans 12, verse 1, where he talks about us as the Christians and says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. So for Paul, worship and sacrifice go together. To like be a living sacrifice to God means to live in worship, means to be kind of like, I call it an ambassador of worship. Wherever I go, I bring an atmosphere of worship in. That's what the priests did. Wherever they were, for the people, it was all about, okay, how can I worship God again? And worship, I brought you a simple definition, is showing honor to a worthy subject. That's like the basic definition. Showing honor to a worthy subject. So worship can be singing here on stage, can be singing at home in your shower, can be singing out loud in the shopping mall, but doesn't have to be singing. It's actually showing honor in any way. So as I said, it's not just about leading worship with an instrument, but what is real worship? What can worship out there wherever we are, if we're priests in the world, tearing down that wall, what can it look like to worship, to bring honor to a worthy subject? And I brought you one verse that I think sums it up quite well, if it's about honoring, worshiping God in everything we do. And this verse is in Colossians chapter 3, verse 23 to 24, saying, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ." I really like this verse because it says, whatever you do. If you are working with kids, with adults, if you're sitting in an office or out on the streets all day long, whatever you do, you can do it from your whole heart for the Lord Jesus, serving Him, honoring Him in whatever you do. This also like turned around for me, like one question I want to just throw into the room. If I do something where I feel like I cannot honor God in that, it's kind of like keeping me from serving God. It's kind of keeping me away from God. It's more like distracting me from God than actually showing honor to Him. Is that something I should do? If I want to worship God, whatever I do can be in honor to Jesus, can be serving Jesus. So honestly, I went through the last week and I was asking myself, okay, what of the things I do is actually honoring Jesus? And it was devastating. It was frustrating. I'm sorry. I have to admit it was not the greatest question to ask myself, because I came to a point where I realized that so many things I do, I just do because they're in my schedule. I just do because I think they need to be done. But I forget about God. I forget about what He does. So I'm not even aware of God myself sometimes. And then how can I even worship Him in that? How can I even honor Him in that? But more to that later. I have one more verse that describes that one a little more. Live as people who are free. Awesome. We are free. In whatever we do, we are free. But not using your freedom as a cover up for evil, but living as servants of God. We are free to live as servants of God. And whatever we do, we can actually do it for God. And even if it's just like washing dishes, I can do it to honor God and to say, yeah, thanks, Chul, for nodding. Um, I can always say, I want to do something useful and say, God, for you I do this. And it's honoring Him, to serve Him. But this verse, Peter says even more, honor everyone, love the brotherhood, what I would translate as love the church, fear God, honor the emperor. It's talking about a lot of honor. Honor everyone. Somehow worshiping God is not just about honoring God. It's not just about everything I do for God, but it's also about in everything I do, I want to honor His creation as well. Everyone. The emperor, even the bosses. Jesus gave us a golden rule for that kind of explains what honoring someone could mean in our daily life. And I think by honoring other people, we honor their creator, and so we honor God. And God and Jesus' golden rule is in Luke 6, verse 31. As you wish that others would do to you, so do so to them. How can I honor other people? By respecting them and showing them respect in asking, would I want to be treated like that? If you have a boss and your boss might be horrible, maybe your whole work situation right now, it's a good question to ask, God, do you actually want me to be here? It's a good question to ask, can I serve God in this? Like, can I still do this job to honor God? Or is it actually just bringing hate up in myself? I think it's also another good question to ask, can I still honor these people by treating them in the way I would want to be treated? A boss, for example, many people are talking behind bosses' backs. There's so many small groups meeting at the table in the lunchroom, talking about what's wrong in this business, what's wrong in this company, but not talking to that person. Would you want to be treated like that? Would you want people to talk behind your backs? Yeah, of course, sometimes it's good to let off steam, but in that way? How can we treat everyone in a 360-degree dimension in a way that we would want to be treated if we were in that position? I think Jesus is giving us an awesome rule here, an awesome question how we can reflect our own behavior, thoughts, attitude in our everyday life and learn how to respect God's creation and through that, the Creator. To worship in our everyday life means to ask, am I doing what I'm doing just for my own benefits, or can I do that for God? And am I doing what I'm doing in a way that it's also showing love and respect to other people in a way that I would want to be treated as well? That is an attitude of worship. That is an attitude that shows respect and honor to worthy subjects, to God as our creator and to his creation as well. I just want to summarize quickly that being a priest in our everyday life means using my influence, the influence that I have, and you have influence as well, using your influence that you have on other people to raise awareness of God's active presence and to spread an atmosphere of worship. An atmosphere of worship, because if you come in there starting to love and respect people, people will realize that. And now I have to go back, sorry. I brought one more verse down here. And God is promising that do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, they will also reap. So if we go out there with an atmosphere of worship, with a heart of worship, with a heart of respect and honor for God and other people, we will earn the same from those people. In German, we have a saying that actually says, as you shout into the forest, it's echoing back. And I think it's the same in this world. As we go out there, the way we treat people, they will start treating us. The way we go out there and bring an atmosphere of worship and raise awareness of who God actually is and that he's present and active, the more people will kind of like adjust to this atmosphere of worship and start asking questions and start realizing that God is there and he's active. But now, it's not going back anymore. Sorry. As I said earlier already, what if I don't feel like I myself am aware of all that? What if I don't feel like I myself am actually worshiping God in what I do, or I don't even feel like I can worship him in what I do? If I kind of have like a wall in between him and myself, a wall that keeps me from going out there and just saying, hey, this is God, or going out there and saying, hey, you're loved and I respect you. And I have to admit, like, I often have such a barrier somewhere because, again, I'm wondering what other people might think or how this is going to affect them. But after looking into it, like, actually, it should affect them. It should do something to them. It should bring a reaction. We should go out there and bring a reaction. In Romans 12, verse 2, it says, do not be just as the whole world is. I'm trying to get the verse on here for you. Or Julie, if you can click, yeah, please. Thank you. Do not be conformed to this world. But it doesn't just say do not be conformed to this world. It says, but instead, you should be renewed in your mind. And Paul is realistic. One more. One more. Thank you. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And I think Paul is realistic in saying we cannot just go out there and be priests. We cannot just go out there and be the church just out of yourself because we might not feel like it. We might not be up for it. We might not know how to do it. And that's why he says we need a change of mind. We need renewal of our minds. We need renewal to understand what's happening out there, where God is active, how we can honor God in what we're doing, how we can do it for God instead of for ourselves, how we can show respect to people even if they don't show respect to us. And I myself struggled a lot over the last week thinking about how can I do better. And I realized that the first step I need to take is to go to God and to say, I need a change of heart. I want a new heart. I want a renewed heart. I want a heart of worship where it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I want to come back to this heart of worship where if I go out into this world, I want to see the good things that are happening and praise God for it. And if I see the bad things, I want to have compassion. I want to see what I can do and how I can react and love and honor to those people and to God's creation. And that's why I also picked out a verse that I want to pray, closing with that, to say, I want a new heart. And that's what David prayed when he screwed up. And he prayed Psalm 51, the verses, I brought the verses 10 to 13. And I actually just want to read that as a prayer right now. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with a willing spirit. Jesus, you called us to be your church. You called us to be priests. You called us to raise awareness in this world that you are here. You've not given up this world. You called us to worship you in everything that we do, even in the hardest situations. You called us to worship you by honoring you in the things we do and by honoring your creation, by showing respect even to the people that we don't feel deserve it. And I really pray that you renew our hearts, that we may become priests that carry the tabernacle even in the desert times, even in the hardest and most dry times. and that we become ambassadors of worship, going out there and spreading an atmosphere of worship. And I'm really wondering what happens when we go out there. Do people see you in our lives? What do they see? How do we use our influence? And I pray that you can transform us, renew our minds, our hearts, who we are, how we live, our attitude, and give us a heart of worship that it's all about you. All about you, Jesus. In your name I pray. Amen.